Good afternoon. Welcome into the Senate Committee on Government Operations Committee meeting of Tuesday, May 12th, 2026. Up for our consideration first today is Senate Bill 298, an act relating to creating the Vermont Voting Rights Act. This was sent across to our sister committee, as they say, and it's been returned with some amendments and changes to it. And we want to welcome in from Indonesia, Christina Sivert, who is the executive director of the Vermont State Ethics Commission. She's joining us on Zoom. And I understand there's about a 12-hour difference there. So we appreciate you either staying up very late or getting up very early, because I think it's about 2 a.m., right?
Yes, I just stayed up. So fading fast, but here. Yeah.
Well, welcome in.
Good to see you.
And love to hear what you have to tell us today about this potential bill.
Sure. So yeah, so I am on leave of absence. I've been on leave of absence since mid-January, but I did think it was important to testify on this particular issue because I'm one of the only people who have been around for, a totality of 4.5 years. And it's kind of knows the specific history of what's been going on during that time. So my first point that I want to make is just, well, to give you a quick overview of the history of this. So the Ethics Commission has always been charged with handling the executive officer forms. We have jurisdiction over public servants. The Secretary of State's office has always handled the dissemination of candidate financial disclosure forms. They have jurisdiction over candidates and elections, so that makes sense that it's divided up that way. The Ethics Commission, per my understanding, was charged with drafting the base form that is used for both candidates and executive officers because the same information is required to be disclosed by both categories of people. So it wasn't because it was, it was an ethics commission's form. We didn't own it. It was just because somebody had to do it and the legislature wanted there to be consistency in the forms that went out. So up until this point, the Secretary of State's office has always disseminated the candidate financial disclosure form with the consent of candidate package, the candidate filing package, and I submitted an example of that because I think that sometimes it's just easier for people to see what it looks like. I looked into this when I first took the job just because I want to understand how it happened, because I personally have not ever seen the candidate financial disclosure form myself. It was sent over to their office prior to my arrival, I think in 2018 and 2019, and I've never seen it since. So every year it's been updated by the Secretary of State's office and sent out with the candidate filing package. And it makes sense because it's only gone out to those candidates who need to file, because not everyone who needs to file runs for election needs to file the form. So this way, the financial disclosure form goes only to the candidates who need to file. It makes sense. It reduces friction. It reduces questions. People don't have to wonder, do I have to file the form? They just know because it's in their package. The only point of contention between our office and the Secretary of State's office until this year over the financial disclosure forms was who answers questions. When I came on, I had a handful of people call our office, referred to us by the Secretary of State's office, asking questions about whether they really had to file the form. There's information that they didn't want to include. What if they didn't include it? What would happen to them? So I was quite uncomfortable answering those questions in the context of, being a candidate and asking what was essentially required to run for election. So I discussed it with the entire commission, and the entire commission agreed that we did not think we should be answering candidate questions. So I brought to the Secretary of State's office at the time. It was a different, makeup of people. They felt like they also didn't want to be answering questions. My understanding at the time, it was a staffing issue. I don't think we delved really deeply into it, but that's my recollection. So fast forward, our office transitioned to an online disclosure system in approximately 2023. We built that system because there was some criticism in the news about the difficulty in finding disclosure information generally for legislators, candidates, so on and so forth. So we built it with the idea that eventually, multiple entities could use it. So, if you build it, they will come. Back then, our office didn't have, as much work as we do now. So we thought it was a good use of our time. So we transitioned executive officers over to that system a couple of years ago. And that's what we use now. We introduced it to the Secretary of State's office. The previous version of the Elections Division was different people there. Asked them if they were interested in using it. They were taking it under consideration. The people changed. We introduced it to the Secretary of State's office again, the new team. They were taking it under consideration as well. At the end of October 2025, they finally decided that they did not want to use the online financial disclosure system, which was, disappointing for us because we felt like it was easier for people to use, it was easier to find the information, and we had been looking forward to kind of cost sharing. In terms of, we spent about $20,000 to build the system, which was, at cost. It was a, government contract with a government contractor that, all the rates are approved in advance. So that was the cost to build the entire system that we now use for our online training as well as for financial disclosures. And it includes like monthly maintenance costs for a couple of years. So that's all rolled into one. Anyway, that is a system that we now use. Secretary of State's office was not interested in sharing the system. And then this year, for the first time ever, it came up, and I still don't know where this came from, that the Secretary of State's office didn't want to have anything to do with Canada financial disclosures at all. I wanted us to take over all of the work related to it. I truly still do not understand, where this is coming from. But in terms of where we are today, I just want to make it clear, and I know you heard this before, that we just literally do not have the staff to do this. We can't. We have one part-time executive director, one part-time administrative assistant. We tried to come to a compromise on this issue. We offered to have both offices jointly post a form just to make sure that it was available in time for candidates. They declined to do that. We offered in House Government Operations to jointly post the form and to resolve the question of candidate questions, even though I'm on vacation at the moment. I haven't been getting paid. I offered to answer questions the best I could in like a triage kind of situation over email to help get us through that impasse. That offer was not taken up. At that point, we thought that our office was going to get an additional staff person that had been passed as part of the House budget. That was removed in the Senate side.
It
But
doesn't mean to move forever. It may come back. We're hoping it'll be there. We're advocating hard for it.
I truly hope so, because I mean, we really are. We've said it every year for the past 3 years, but the Ethics Commission is really hanging in the balance. But I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I'm getting tired. So I just want to make it clear that right now, the most the Ethics Commission can do related to candidate financial disclosures is to post the form. We can't do anything more than that with our current staffing. I also wanted to clarify a couple of points that have come up, because I think you understand the staffing issue, but there is some history here when it comes to the change in language that happened in 2024 from the Ethics Commission shall prepare the form to the Ethics Commission shall create and maintain the form. So the Ethics Commission itself actually specifically asked for that language change. I started the conversation in 2023 when we were talking about candidate financial disclosures. It carried over into 2024. And so our intention in asking for that language change was to confirm that the only role the Ethics Commission had in the candidate financial disclosure form was to create the form, nothing more. I specifically asked for a language change because I want to be clear that it was not us who was responsible for answering questions. That's not to say that we were trying to push it on a Secretary of State's office. We just wanted to make it clear that it wasn't our role. And my recollection was that there was a general agreement that the Ethics Commission should not be involved in elections and should not have any role beyond just creating the base form. So I just want to make it clear, because it seems that some people are taking that change in language to mean the Ethics Commission was assigned new responsibilities, but that was definitely not the case. There are also just several, kind of practical policy reasons, several reasons that are both practical and related to policy why the Ethics Commission should really not be taking on candidate financial disclosure responsibilities. We think we should be out of it completely. Like, our goal right now is to not have anything to do with candidate financial disclosures. This makes sense. We've looked at what happens in other states, particularly in New England states. And the entity that is responsible for candidate financial disclosures is also responsible for campaign finance. So in some states, that's the Secretary of State's office, and in some states, that's the Ethics Commission. But that's the through line. If somebody has responsibility for campaign finance, they also handle candidate financial disclosures. It just makes sense.
So Christina, it's good to see you, and I hope you're having an incredible time. how many states have it bifurcated so that the Secretary of State does the financial filing and the Ethics Commission does the campaign does the candidate financial disclosure? And how many states are they united on in one place or the other?
That one I don't know the answer to. When it comes to New England, I would say there's zero bifurcation. That's what we discovered. When it comes to the entire 50 states,
Sorry, so that means they're all both those forms are with the Secretary of State?
it means that all the forms are housed in one location. So they're
Right.
not, yeah.
Right,
So
I
it could be with the
appreciate that.
ethics body, or it could be with the Secretary of State's office, but they're not split up into two.
Okay, and are in any of those states, are they all with the Ethics Commission?
No, I think there's at least one that's the Secretary of State. To be honest, TJ would be best placed to answer that question, and I can ask him to follow up with you. But I think there's at least one, whether it's the Secretary of State. But different states do things differently. He did look at all 50 states, and he found the trend was to always keep them together. When we looked at New England, they're always kept together. But it depends on whether it's the ethics body or the Secretary of States that can be different. But they are housed together. So just trying to race through quickly because I do understand that you've been hearing about this for a while now, but if we were to take over, or if we were by statute required to take over these responsibilities, the people who are really going to be hurt by this are going to be candidates, right? Because we can't do it. We just can't do it. We just need to make it clear that we can't take on all of these new responsibilities. We've already had to stop, offering municipal services. So when we had to stop offering municipal services, the folks that are hurt by that are the municipalities themselves who are supposed to be getting free services. We do think that we have not heard any complaints previously about the way that it's worked in the past. The method that the form was sent out by the Secretary of State's office, received by candidates, then filed back with the Secretary of State's office or wherever they file their consent of candidate package. Like, we have not heard any actual complaints about that process from anyone until this year. And as I mentioned, we're still not sure why there's a desire for change, but I have heard that it's been put forward that there's somehow a conflict of interest when it comes to an elected official handling these forms because of the perception of political bias, or it's being called a conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. Sorry, I'm also sick, so my voice isn't so great right now. But the Ethics Commission, we're the entity charged with the State Code of Ethics and answering questions about conflicts of interest. This isn't a conflict of interest, right? The idea is that there's a sense that there could be a perception of political bias if a candidate files a form and asks for advice and then does not like the advice they receive about what they have to file. But we're talking about a situation where we have nonpartisan state employees who are answering those questions. And to say that there's a conflict of interest, what you're really doing is saying that a potential perception of political bias is really a conflict of interest. And then there's a next step taken where that is then imputed on state employees who are nonpartisan actors just carrying out their regular government duties. So I really wanted to flag that because I think it's quite dangerous to start calling something like this a conflict of interest when it does not fall into the category of conflict of interest, but also there's implications throughout government. I mean, are you going to tell the state auditor's office that they have to stop audits, because it's headed by an elected official and, their office is potentially, auditing other, elected officials or state entities, and somebody could complain there's a political bias in that. Same with the campaign finance disclosures. So when you're campaign finance issues, because if you're saying that, Secretary of State's office can't handle candidate financial disclosures, well, the same argument applies to campaign finance issues. So are those also going to be moved to Ethics Commission? And I think that's a legitimate question. But again, that comes down to staffing. Do you want everything to be housed in one place? I think it makes sense to house everything in one place. Do you want it to be the Ethics Commission? We have to be staffed for that. So in sum, I don't want to take too much of your time, and I want to answer any questions that you may have. I mean, our proposal for right now is, again, we just jointly agree to post the form. We posted it because we heard it was being distributed, by others who are not us upon request. And some people were getting in the form and then coming to our office with questions. And we felt like that wasn't fair, that everyone needed to have equal access to the form. So that's the reason why we posted it. And so we just feel, we haven't changed our position. I think both offices should jointly post the form. If we can do that, then I will volunteer to do my very best to answer questions to the best of my ability, while I'm out of the country. It won't be immediate, but I'll do my very best to get back to people within, a few days, or, as fast as I can. And then would hope to continue this conversation next year when we can really examine the issues to the extent that they should be examined, because this is all happening very fast.
Senator Clarkson.
Thank you. So Christina, I agree. I think we are a candidate, speaking of the candidate, we all go to the secretary. Oh, well, I'm not a candidate this year, okay? Becca's making face.
No, she did not find it.
But I've been a candidate for 22 years at different boards. So we all are trained now to go to the Secretary of State's website for everything, so I agree with you. Long term, it absolutely everything should be, I think, at the Secretary of State's website and in their office. For this year, however, we are in this last minute moment where I think the Secretary of State's office is willing to work going forward with you on solving this problem, and obviously we'll work on it in the legislature as well. I think for this year, we really are stuck with sort of what we've seemed to be agreeing to do, which is moving forward, having the form posted, linked at the Secretary of State's website, having it at your website, and just not having any penalties for not filling it in or not getting your questions answered. Isn't that sort of where we are at the moment? We're just, there's nothing punitive if you have failed to fill it out properly. But I do think it would be helpful to post somewhere, maybe on both sites, that if you have questions about this, contact a lawyer or contact somebody. So I think it would be great if we could figure out who to send the questions to.
Yeah.
What law?
I mean, our proposal included posting a joint FAQ that would, answer most of the questions. I think our issue is just we want to see it posted both places. And I will say I am really worried about locking in statutory language that gives us responsibilities that we can't handle. I mean, one thing that I specifically said on the House side was, I will do my best while on vacation, while not being paid, to answer questions by email just because to be a good public servant. Then we ended up with language that said required to answer by phone or by email. I don't know what that means. Am I going to be spending $50 a phone call to answer, phone calls from the Ethics Commission from Indonesia? I mean, I would just really prefer not to see all of that language be included in this bill. So if the proposal is that we post it, then we say the Ethics Commission for this year will post it with the understanding that we come back next year for a full discussion. I'm just so worried that this will be ensconced in statute the way it's written now, and it'll be really detrimental to us and to candidates.
Yeah, I share that concern. I'm wondering, and this is actually, I think, a question for our attorney, and that would be if there is a way to put in session law for this year that it'll be posted, but then not.
Carry redraft to the sections.
Oh, that would be helpful.
I mean, they still propose striking the House language saying that the Ethics Commission is required to answer by phone. But the dual posting, we could put it in session law.
Anyone else have questions for Christina or?
So we could.
I'll just weigh in if I might. We did very clearly advocate for you to get the resources that you had asked for when we sent our appropriations request to the committee next door. You were on our list to do what they could to fill the positional requirements. So it was the appropriations committee that made the final determination. We don't make financial determinations here. The Senate Appropriations Committee did. I did speak with Deputy Secretary of State Hibbert earlier today, and as Senator Clarkson has indicated, that office is very willing and open to continuing discussions with your office to come to a resolution. It probably won't be this year, though. It'll have to be next year. We're in the middle right now, as many of us have discovered, of putting petitions in, consent form, and then answering a financial disclosure page. And there are, to be fair, some FAQs on that form I think there's 3 or 4 of them, which were helpful for me. And I haven't filed my papers yet, but I did look at the disclosure form. So it's clear that unless you have $25,000 in a particular stock, or you're able to control sort of the way that a company is run, whether you own it or have enough equity in it to be able to direct it, then you're not required to be any more specific than that. I was a little bit still confused about trusts. Some families have trusts that someone's spouse may have. I guess, again, it's all according to how you interpret what trust means, whether you have to disclose all of that. But anyway, so both sites now include the same form and have for probably the last week or so. But in the meantime, we're halfway through this period of time when we have to get our paperwork in. So that was the thrust of the indemnification, if you will, political candidates not being held liable for any penalties that would be incurred. But I'll just say again that I appreciated the FAQs. I did my best to answer it. And if, to me, this is a complaint-driven situation where unless someone points out the fact that someone has answered this incorrectly or not entirely, I'm not sure what else ever happens here. The same is true for our ethics panel inside the Senate. There's a 1-page financial disclosure. Many of the questions are similar. But unless somebody kind of rattles the cage, I'm not sure anybody else would ever even bother looking at someone's financial disclosure, let alone bringing it up and looking for some sort of investigation. I am a little bit, and I don't know whether it was Senator White's, one of us brought up the fact that our addresses are now on the form, and that could lead to someone stalking somebody or, you know, finding out where they live kind of thing. And I'm not sure why we needed that part of it, but it's on the form. So there's not much we're going to be able to do about that.
Our addresses are in the phone. I mean, our addresses are.
I think what I mean, we talk to the Secretary of State because we did in a bill, I think it might have been the same bill where we did this language, we did allow for some of this information on these forms to be redacted. But my understanding from the Secretary of State is for some reason,
Yeah.
it's not redactable on these forms.
Oh.
And we could change that.
Well, again, we
I think
could
for your address, you can put your work address.
yeah.
Well, no, actually, that's not, I just
don't
want to
think
be
that's
clear,
right.
I don't believe that's accurate information because you do require on the form, I think it's listed home address.
Yeah.
And it's, so that's not my home address. And then also it asks for the workplace address for both you and if you have a spouse or a domestic partner. So I do have to list where my husband works and I have to list where I work as an address. And I guess my main point has always been to this one, is that should be redacted.
Yeah.
And it's,
Well, the address, not where they work.
I mean, I also would feel more comfortable if that was redacted as well.
But that's
because
important.
It is.
I'm sorry, I think that's public information, and that's important for the public to know where our partners, where we're influenced. How are we influenced? That's what we're all getting at, is influence. And so where a person's partner works is important to know where. It doesn't have to have the address.
Yeah, I guess I generally don't feel it's relevant, other than what my partner's profession is, other than, like, I can understand the conflict of interest with that, but I guess it makes me feel
conflict of interest that we've experienced in the budgets.
I mean, yeah, I think.
I wish it could be more general because it is.
Well, I didn't know how to answer. I'm on Social Security. What's the address of Social Security? I have no idea. Is it Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington? And how about the state of Vermont? Because we all get a salary and expenses.
115 State Street. So
Okay, but I mean,
I'm looking at the form that's posted on our website. It does not ask for your home address.
Okay, well, when I see, let's pull it up. It says,
is that the 2020 version? Or is that the current?
no, let's.
this is the updated one. Okay, yeah, so it doesn't ask on this one. There's also a financial disclosure that we fill out for our Senate, and I
Yeah.
believe that, so that's my apologies, but it does specifically ask for employer address.
Yeah. Yes.
So I think the argument holds true in that respect as well, because a lot of stalking is actually related to your work address.
I will say that that information is not newly required. That's been there for the past, 8 years. So that
Yes,
was
but
part of the original form.
you wouldn't mind, Ms. Severett, just understanding, like, I understand your argumentation back and forth, that's not new, but I think you could understand perhaps
Right.
why it may be information that now that it's clear, people may not want that information provided.
And sadly, things have changed in those 8
Yeah,
years, which is
exactly.
heartbreaking.
A woman was murdered in her home. Her husband was murdered. I mean, it's serious since we've had these conversations.
Senator Morley.
Are we going to take off the attestation on the back?
We have attestation every time you put your expenses in.
Yeah.
We self-attest all the time.
If, devil's advocate here, if Chair Cullimore incorrectly puts down some information here, right? He does hereby attest that this information is true, accurate, complete to the best of my knowledge.
To
I
the best of
understand
his
that
knowledge.
the intentional falsification, omission, or concealment of a material fact may subject him to administrative, civil, and criminal liability.
Okay, good. There's an out there.
Yeah, there is.
To the best of your knowledge, like always, I mean, you can only say yes to what you know.
Okay.
Or think you know.
And I think the other, perhaps more fundamental argument, it's not really an argument, maybe, interpretation is, and I'd invite Tim up to the table if he so chooses, only if he so chooses, that the interpretation of create and maintain, I understand what you're saying, Christina, that in your view, that just meant coming up with a form and changing it when new statutes were added or provisions to our election law. But maintain to me could mean having control over that form in some fashion, that you store it in your office or online digitally so that you can refer back to it on occasion. And I don't know whether that's a true definition or not. I don't know why we use the word maintain, but we did pass that.
I think you're right. I think that the word maintain does imply you're going to store it. You're going to at
Yeah.
least keep it. It may not imply much more than that, but for me, it implies you're going to keep it.
And unfortunately, I don't think you could, I think it would be hard for anybody found a worse year to ask for funding. It just was one of these years that there just weren't a lot of quarters or dollar bills in the cushions of the couch.
Well-
And so, I know that's glossing over something that's very dear to your heart, and I understand that. But I don't think it's gonna come out of the conference committee any differently than it went in. So I think we have to, as Senator Clarkson mentioned earlier, look ahead to the next session to find a solution to this. Hopefully that means that you do get additional staffing, or that if we choose that it's the other way in the Secretary of State's office. And I think Deputy Secretary made it very clear they need another position as well, if in fact we're going to make them do the work. So I just offer that out as where we are kind of thing. Senator Bielski.
Given that the Secretary of State's office has already been doing this work for the last 8 years, I'm really confused why they would need another position to continue doing it. Whereas we're asking the Ethics Commission, who's been telling us for years they don't have the staff to do the work we've already given them, to now do work that was previously done by the Secretary of State's office. So I'm just really confused because up until this argument, for lack of
Or this
better,
bill, and then this
the
discussion.
Secretary of State office was already doing it.
But I'm not sure how often they were charged with answering questions about the
They
form.
answer questions about it.
Also, it's an election year. I think people never really cared last year.
But they've been doing it for 8 years.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah,
And so I don't know why it is suddenly an issue. They've had before.
because we
managed
changed the
before.
language.
I mean, we changed the language to say that the Ethics Commission would make the form,
Yeah.
but that didn't change
It did.
the hosting of the form or like,
that we need to clarify going forward and after this session. We
It
need to
didn't
clarify
create more-
the answers to the
I
question.
guess my point is that it didn't create more work that already exists in the Secretary of State's office.
Well, I just recall the testimony from Lauren saying, if we are to do this, we need a position. And just as unlikely as it is that in the conference committee, anything will change with respect to the funding for the Ethics Commission, I don't think they're gonna find a position in the Secretary of State's office.
No, I hear that. I guess my confusion is they're already doing it and have been for the last 8 years. So I don't understand what makes them now. The elections division is very busy and probably also understaffed, but this hosting and managing this form as part of the candidate packet is not new work. It's work
Right.
they've already been doing. So why do they need a new position to continue doing the work they're already doing?
For 8 years.
I'm not sure that this isn't additional work, I guess.
So
It's not. No, they've already been doing it.
Christina, I would hold out hope. There's a major $12 million negotiation that's going on. And if some of that 12 million is liberated, I believe the Ethics Commission is top priority. And there was a great piece on Vermont Public, which you probably didn't hear in Indonesia, but it really, Paul was interviewed. It was just terrific, really crying out for supporting your commission more fully.
Okay,
So,
yeah, thank you. I mean, we still do
I'm
have
living in
hope for
hope.
this
I'm
session.
living in hope that your position is going to be funded.
We still do have hope for this session. I should make it clear, like, we don't think of an entire position is needed just to do this particular work. I mean, it's going to be for, 6 weeks every 2 years, right? And what happened the last election cycle is the Secretary of State's office did answer the questions. When they didn't know the answer, they contacted us for support. We told them how we answered for executive officers. Then they were the face of it for candidates, which I think is the appropriate way to go with that. I just want to make a note about the maintained language. So initially, the language was that we requested was we create the form. Somebody, by my recollection, the committee raised the issue of like, well, what happens when it changes? Who's responsible for updating it? And that's how the maintained language got added. So it was specifically tied to the idea that we would continue to update the form. So that's where we came from. But just in summary, I mean, we're perfectly happy to have the status quo that we're doing right now, jointly post the form for this session. We're not arguing about the financial penalties. We couldn't do it for executive officers this year either. So, we're not arguing about that particular piece. I mean, we understand we can't do the work anyway, so we can't do it for executive officers. But I would like to just request that, like, we put off the full conversation until next year. And for now, you mentioned session law or whatever it might be, that we agree to jointly post the form this year, and next year we have a more fulsome discussion, so we can genuinely look at the issues to the extent that they need to be looked at.
Well, I can respect that point. And I guess I have kind of two trains of thought. The first is what within S-298 that we're doing now would need to change to allow for that. And my preference is that we concur as much as possible with the House version. So I'd like to avoid as limited of changes as possible. There was an earlier conversation about like statutory, session law. So
I would love to put it in session law because that would mean it was not.
yeah, so I kind of in that conversation, but then the other train of thought, and since we have a separate here, I guess I'm still confused about is, let's say next year it comes out that there is a belief that a candidate has violated something related to their employment and their candidacy, or when they became elected and it was some kind of violation occurs. What information? I'm just like, what happens then? Because my understanding is the Ethics Commission now can't investigate or do anything. So we'd already be relying on the Senate version of the form through the Senate Ethics Commission. And no one would be holding candidates accountable either way because they are unable to violate it. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, what is the harm that's occurring if we do what we want to do and there's no fines and no one's answering questions? Like, what actually happens if there is an ethical complaint?
Well, I can remember suggesting to the committee that we just do away with the form this year. Kind of put it on the shelf and don't have it. But then the pushback was, yeah, but what if you filed your petition on the first day you could? which I think was April 27th.
Yeah.
And you filled out the disclosure form. That's not fair either. And so we're about halfway through that period now, and I don't know what else to do except to go with what was suggested by others.
Okay.
Senator Bielanski.
So part of the confusion this has created is happening now for the third or fourth time in this discussion. And this is part of the confusion created by housing this with the Ethics Commission. A candidate can't
Yeah, exactly.
can't have an ethical violation because the only thing the candidate can violate is not violating the form. The form is not about ethics. It's about transparency. If I have a candidate, I'll use myself. If I am a candidate and I'm running saying, you know what, I support a Green New Deal, and then I file my disclosure and it turns out I work for Exxon Valdez,
Or you could still.
people might want to know that.
Yeah.
It's not that my working for Exxon Valdez violates anything. It's the information people want to have. If my primary income is coming from oil,
Oh, no, I completely agree with that.
this is why my argument is that it shouldn't be with the Ethics Commission because there is no ethic. There's no hinge on which it's an ethics issue. It's
Yeah.
just a transparency.
No, but they, ethics commission took on creating.
Right, because
Which
they
is
already,
fine.
because they do for the other stuff. Right. So they were like, sure, we'll give you the form we use.
But for this year, we've agreed to keep the form. We've agreed to.
But maintain the status quo, essentially.
Right.
But my concern is that the House language does not maintain the status quo. The House language tasks the Ethics Commission with answering questions and being in charge of this form.
So then I thought that they were not, that I thought that the House had no penalties and no consequences for not.
That's part of it, but the
Separate.
other part of it, the
Got it.
other section that the House sent over
Ethics commission
firmly
is still
tasked
bad.
the Ethics Commission with being responsible for the.
Okay, in all fairness, then I mean, I agree that it would be great to just concur, but we could concur with a very modest strikeout.
And what I'm suggesting is we strike that part out and we put the suspension of fines in session law.
And put it all in session,
Because that would maintain the status quo. Okay.
right?
Yeah, and I
I'd like to maintain the status quo.
Yeah, I guess I'm not disagreeing with the transparency angle. Like, that's a value. I guess I'm trying to understand, like, outside of just generally having information that's relevant to your voting,
That's
like,
what's
what
relevant.
is, yeah, and I think that is relevant. I also hope that a candidate would be forthright. And if they worked for a certain company,
Or where they're
Um,
invested, not always.
yeah. Well, no, more where they're employed, I think is the point.
Or how many apartments they own, as we know.
That's, yeah.
On
That's
three
all.
different bills in this building, it's just astonishing.
And that sort of like gets to the point that you have made is this doesn't belong with the Ethics Commission. There's no ethics to violate.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
Clear-
confuses the whole thing for me.
It should be housed as it has been for the last 8 years, the Secretary of State.
Well,
I think we actually have a proposal, because I think I want very much to concur, but I also would love to be able to cut this out and put it in session law. And just take out the piece that requires them to do anything but the status quo. If we can do the status quo for this year, I'm fine with that. I thought the bill sort of was the status quo with no consequences.
again, in my view, and I'm not an attorney, it depends on your interpretation of what create and maintain
Okay.
means. We passed that a couple of years ago, and I thought it meant that the Ethics Commission would hold on to the form and maintain it, store it, and then be able to answer questions if any of them came up, since it's their form.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
Well, this happened a couple of years.
If we put this language in
24, I
years
think.
ago.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Go ahead, Christina.
I was part of it
You
though.
made a mistake.
sorry, I mean, we did reach, it was part of Act 171, you know, and unfortunately, Act 171 got really bogged down in financial disclosures when we really wanted it to be about, sorry about that, municipal ethics. But, you know, I think we did reach out earlier just to get a sense of like the committee makeup at the time and how they had read the language. And that it did come back to us that there was an understanding that the Ethics Commission wasn't required to answer questions as part of the change in that language. Because again, we requested the language, we would have never requested it to give ourselves additional responsibilities. I myself specifically requested it with the understanding that it meant we created the form and did nothing beyond that except for update it when the statute changed, which is what was happening with Act 171. So it's happening in conjunction with the statute changing the disclosure requirements at the time.
But in effect, if there's no penalties, it really does, in a way, not matter about the form, because no one's going to be able to do anything about somebody that files it late or in fact doesn't file it.
No, there won't be any financial penalty, and that is the status quo that's been going on for the last few years. So it's just something that needs to be organized because we have to put an actual system in place for invoicing, reaching out to people, doing all of those kind of things. Where the forms are most likely going to come up is, in identifying conflicts of interest. That's the purpose, right? The transparency is so that if people want to identify a conflict of interest, then they have it there. So if somebody were going to file a complaint about a conflict of interest, then the financial disclosure form, wherever it's housed, could be like added to a complaint as evidence of a conflict of interest. So that's like the main place where it would be likely to come up. If, for example, somebody filed a form and they intentionally filed false information. So they, work for an oil company, they intentionally did not disclose that because, for example, they wanted to work on legislation related to, oil company. That is a case where somebody could file a complaint with our office based on the attestation and be referred to the Attorney General's office to look into. When we have people file the executive officer form with our office, we do give everybody the chance to update it. We reach out to them if we think a mistake has been made. So we really do try and work with people just to make sure the form is correct. So it would really be a very kind of severe situation where somebody's actually getting in trouble because they have every opportunity to make the changes to the form.
Okay. Well, thank you. I know you're up very late or very early, depending on how you look at a clock.
She's getting jump on the day.
So we appreciate your taking time today, and we'll see how this moves.
And enjoy all those amazing temples on Java. Go and see.
Thank you. Thank you.
Temples. They're amazing.
I will do so. All right.
They're
Thank you for having me.
sites. They are gobsmacked.
Okay. Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me. Good luck. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Well, okay, I was hoping that we would just move this today, given the pro tem's talk at the end of the session about being ready to report when it's on the calendar.
Right.
Uh,
I agree with you, and I think we could do that today. I think we could move with that change that we just talked about. I didn't know when you sent me that note, I wasn't clear. Is the amendment a piece of moving the bill?
yeah, it's in the bill.
No,
it's
the
not.
amendment,
Oh, no, that's different.
the PAC amendment.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, we talked about that on
No, I know it's
Friday and decided with a 3-2 straw vote, we would not include it in the bill. I thought,
right.
that's how I.
Yeah, no, and we seem to have.
Oh,
I know.
There
It's
seems to be a
just
middle
fluid.
space, so I know it was I believe the three of us that
Yeah.
were opposed. There is a middle way that does not open the door to what we were concerned about, but does solve some of the issues that were being brought to us.
oh,
But I don't have the language yet because I'm still waiting for it.
On its way.
Hopefully, you also don't have the language yet.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at Tim like it.
I'm waiting for it with the people from the folks who
Oh.
told me, who brought to me that there was a
A
middle way, a forward path where everyone can get what they need.
Where we address dark money and.
Where we don't open the door to dark money, but we address that with the strictest reading of the language, everyone is a pack.
so
Yes.
you're suggesting that we delay it again?
I'm
Yes.
maybe.
Yeah, I'll just say, well, I really appreciate that. I still, and I've talked to the people who I like, who have told me that this is a good idea. I also am concerned about the dark money angle. So I would be comfortable with a change if it did not create that loophole again, because I think although I've been told by individuals who may want to testify on the topic that that's not really a concern. I also received multiple emails from individuals who I reached out to, who it is a concern.
Yeah, oh, I agree,
So-
I won't, I
It's a
can't
concern.
support changing
Okay.
that to.
Apparently, they only contacted 3 of the 5 members.
I'll say,
This is all news to me.
yes, and I apologize. We probably should have connected prior to.
That would be probably a good idea.
On behalf of your council, have you received any of these suggestions?
No.
No.
I agree with you, Senator White, that I can't support moving back to or. But if there truly is a way to solve the issue that is being raised that doesn't do that, but I haven't seen it yet. I mean, I've been told it exists.
Trying to think procedurally.
We could do, we
I
could
don't-
move it on the
Well,
floor and then
well, I
amend
was
it.
thinking about a floor amendment, but I don't know that.
I just told them to it for another day. We can, I think that the fire has to be lit under this person's tuckus.
You ready to go
And
see?
we need language. Yes.
I'm gonna have to talk to Senator Brewer because
I
it
know,
was
but
obvious that he wanted, if it's on as a House proposal of amendment, you either are gonna concur and move it or request a conference committee.
Yeah.
I mean, we got 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
that's
maybe
okay.
left.
I have bills that haven't even come back from the house yet, so we're all in a bit of a pickle.
Would you be able to enlighten the 2 members of the committee who have no idea?
I don't know what it is.
Well, how do you strike a
So my,
Dan, that you-
solution?
Yeah, maybe we could have
Yeah.
BNRC.
BCB.
BC, I apologize.
Vermont Conservation Voters.
Okay,
You want me to?
sure.
Okay.
He's got a draft.
I'm just assured.
No, I don't, I realize. So,
We're trying to make all our friends happy, just so.
Dan Fingus, Executive Director of Vermont Conservation Voters. I'm not a lawyer, which is why I'm happy to talk about this, but we also have attorneys who are working on this and they're already in conversation with the Secretary of State's office
Oh.
to make sure that whatever is created is not then going to flag for them and be a problem. And so that's why it's taken a minute to get this language. So you all looked at language that looked at changing the definition of a PAC. It used to say or, and it got changed to and. There are multiple layers of potential consequences to the one word change. One is that because you also changed it from 2 to 1, and there's a committee or informal committee, there is a concern from at least 2 elections attorneys and maybe the Secretary of State's office that you say one person in an informal committee doing either thing, that every single donor to a campaign who spends more than $500 becomes a PAC or has to register as a PAC. So if I write a check, that's a huge problem. The other thing is organizations like mine, the C4, 501c4 organization, and unions, a lot of different kinds of organizations have been able to share with their membership their endorsements. Say, we endorse these people for these reasons. Under this new strict or rule, changing the word, all of those endorsement activities would become PAC activities. And we become into a position, I'm a C4, I get donations for lots of different kinds of work. We do endorsements, but we do a lot of other things. We get grant funding from different nonprofit organizations. We wouldn't know. We'd either have to look at not doing endorsements, even though they're part of federal election law and state election law for a long time, or do I have to put every donation I get from everybody, no matter what it's for, into the campaign finance system? If a nonprofit gives me a $10,000 grant, how do I put a $10,000 grant if likely this would be a coordinated PAC? Then that's over the limits. And all of a sudden for organizations, and then do unions then have to put every single member of their union who's giving them dues into the system? Because they're using treasury dollars to do their endorsements because it's always been member to member communication. And so this or to and actually has created huge problems for potential individual donors, C4 organizations, unions, all because of the one word change. Because we as C4 organizations, unions, even individuals, we don't fundraise for elections.
Right.
We have IE PACs and coordinated PACs that are separate that we do fundraising to, but as a C4 nonprofit organization, we don't fundraise. And so with the and language, we never fundraise for elections, but then we would spend a little bit of money on endorsements and we would not have to be a PAC. Now that you have the or language, we're not fundraising for elections still, but now as soon as we spent a penny on any kind of endorsement activity, we are now a PAC.
So this is the best articulation of a problem. This is a better articulation of a problem than I've heard today.
Okay,
So thank you,
yes.
Dan, for that.
So,
I wish we'd heard from you a week ago.
Yeah.
I wish I'd known we were on your schedule on Friday. I would have been happy to be here on Friday and just so you know, with the different, we had brought this to various folks in leadership. It was thought that this was going to be dealt with in the House side. So we did meet with the
So they
chair
didn't
of
do
House
this.
Government Operations and, the last issue that you just dealt with popped up and their committee time went to the Ethics Commission
Got it.
issue and they didn't
Got it.
have time to get to this issue, which we did not realize until after crossover when we were meeting with our attorneys and they said, here's changes to the laws. And they dug into it enough to see where that there were going to be these new definition problems.
And these new challenges.
So it's all like the last couple weeks that we even knew this was an issue because it didn't ping because you were all working on it for a whole different reason.
Yeah.
And
It
and
sounds
so-
like this is an issue we should fix before we go any further.
Why don't we just go back to Ann?
Because
Well,
that's problems.
I will tell you that has been our preferred option because it is the simplest way to fix the problems. I know that there are other issues that people are concerned about.
Yeah.
Our position is there are real world, like for sure things that will happen
Both
that are
you and
negative if we-
nonprofits, a
if
lot.
we change, and to donors, if we don't change it back. There are concerns about other potential scenarios if we,
So
Yeah.
let me hold off.
Yeah.
If this amendment is included in the bill, doesn't Ann remain?
correct, the or is, no, the or is the law. The or is what you all pass.
Okay.
And so they're asking us to do this.
Do the-
Put it back to Ann. which it
Correct.
wasn't.
Correct.
There are other options to fix, but it gets much more complicated.
So everybody else,
This has been the law for 3 years. How has it not become a problem before now?
No, the definition change, or at least according to the Secretary of State,
1 year.
became as part of July 1st, 2025.
Yeah.
It has not been an election cycle where it has been
Yeah.
part of the law.
Yeah.
That is, and I can double check, but I'm almost positive this was something you all did either, I think last
It
year,
didn't take effect for.
Right.
or it didn't take effect. So it has not been part of an election cycle yet.
I think-
Yes, any question?
I think I mentioned the T word before. Whoever's working on this, we need this ASAP.
Yep.
And if we could deal with this to took us. I used the word
Oh,
fire on took us already, so I think, because I'm sitting across from that.
I thought you meant
laughing
fine,
at me.
but.
I figure I better not use it again. But I think that we need this as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Gives us then some time
Well-
to also try and fix the session law issue.
And I will say, I still believe the and or, and I know that there are people who don't all love it, is the simplest way. The way that we have that's an alternative way is to use some federal language. That definitely fixes. That definitely, well, the way the federal allows de minimis administrative things can help. That will help the organizations and the unions and a bunch of groups. I'm not sure, and there are others who would have to see if that helps with the donor problem. Because it's really the confluence of one informal committee or that creates the every donor who gives money becomes a PAC. Like it's literally baked into the current definition of PAC that any one individual who spends money is a PAC. And if they spend more than 500, they have to report. Technically, as soon as they've spent $1, they are a PAC.
Sounds like that's.
You brought in the PAC definition so much.
But it sounds
that
like
it's-
that's still a problem with the word and. That doesn't solve. it.
No, and it does, because if you're an individual, you're not raising money to then give it to a political campaign. You have money, you're working, or you have retirement or whatever. That's true. No, it doesn't fix all the issues.
But there is a fix in the words and we just need to see it.
There is a fix in the works for some of it. We'd have to talk to Secretary of State about fixing the donor issue. That is because I don't know how and there's an attorney behind me that I can't see, but he may have thoughts. I don't know how you get around that definition without changing that definition, but that's beyond my pay grade.
Conservation voters, you think you do everything.
So,
about
yeah.
it.
So we don't have a law degree, and there's value in a law degree.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm supportive of the fact that this would be, it doesn't stop people from donating. It doesn't stop you from doing your work, but it would be a frustrating annoyance to have to continue to do that. And I can respect that that's not the point of the law. The law is not to limit engagement or cause frustrating bureaucratic requirements. But again, my main concern is the carryover from election to election. So you have draft proposals
We
to
are-
resolve that as well? And when would we be able to see that?
So we have draft proposal, that our attorney is.
And that Warren's looking at now.
And yes, and so we're trying to figure out for fixing some of it. I think part of the carryover thing, and again, I'm probably over my skis, is there are things around public questions that are different than candidate campaigns. So some of the examples that you all are giving about one person who's going to influence a public question, the public question thing isn't actually fixed yet. So you wouldn't have to show your contributions to a public question anyway, according to the Secretary of State. Again, I'm just going by what I've been.
Okay,
as
but an
I've talked to.
election for a candidate.
In an election for a candidate, yes.
Yeah.
And I get the multi-cycle. I think there are ways to fix this. I think trying to fix it in the definition of a PAC has broadened the definition of PAC so much that it's everything.
Okay, well then I really hope that we get some clarity from Tim because I'm happy to support the amendment if there is no other alternative. Like I'm ultimately happy with that, but I would prefer to remove the carry forward because I have heard the same. I know you said that it's not a big issue and I read your lawyer's statement. It's not a big issue. It is a big issue. And I heard directly from folks who work in campaigns in other states who described how this has been a loophole there. It's especially something that's been exploited by Americans for Prosperity. So
So
I
Lauren
don't like-
is listening.
and Lauren Hibbert.
Yeah, and she's texted me, us, actually.
Oh,
She doesn't think contributions to a candidate have to be disclosed and union dues do not need to be disclosed.
oh, okay. There you go.
There it is. Okay.
So then you're-
Then I think that we solved the problem
Okay,
with your solution,
all right.
the middle ground solution.
We will get you language.
Okay.
Okay, and
All
so,
right, then I'll have to talk to Senate Pro Tem and we're gonna have to put this off another day, I guess.
and then, so I'm asking Lauren, well, Lauren, you're listening anyway, so we can just ask, so we hope you're working. We're gonna have language, we hope, in the next day. We need it ASAP.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
I mean, I have the federal language. I just don't want to, I don't know enough about the state law to just give you
Well,
federal.
Tim does, so
I know, so I'm gonna
give it
get-
to Tim.
We're gonna have Anthony Arapino, who's our attorney, get language to Tim.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
That sounds good.
So we might be able to fix that.
Yeah, and session law all at the same time. Tim is a session law fixes it too difficult. See. easy.
I'm not necessarily in
Okay,
favor of
okay.
that.
But it's easy, he says.
He certainly can do what we ask him to do.
I know, Zach.
He plays our lawyer.
Well, I mean, not everybody says it's easy.
Yeah. Okay, well, nice work, guys, for an hour. So you're taking a step backwards.
Oh,
No, and I'll take it going forward, I promise.
Oh.
I'll get it to you.
but
Tea, I got
Dan,
it.
thank you
Yeah,
for
that's- thank you for that.
articulating the
But I'm
problem,
ultimately fine.
the best we've heard so far.
I appreciate, I'm happy to do it.
I appreciate it. I wouldn't have done it as well since I appreciate him doing it as well.
Do we have the city of Barry made?
They're right there. Look, Nicholas is right here with
Oh,
you,
Hello.
but it's very short.
so let's move right into 902,
Spring look.
an act relating to approval of the amendments to the city, charter of the city of Barry.
Okay, I was like,
Hello, Chair and members of the committee. Good to see so many of you after our visits to.
Sorry, I didn't mean that for you.
it was man.
Melissa,
It was Melissa.
oh, yeah, I didn't-
Okay,
to see if we passed anything.
We were hopeful.
My frustration was that we hadn't passed.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I'm glad to be here to testify on H 902. This codifies two changes to the Berry City Charter that were approved by our voters at the May 2025 town meeting day election. The first change is pretty technical, relates to the sale and lease of city property. The charter as it's written says that only the mayor may sign all conveyances of city property. The change that was approved by the voters would expand that to provide that in addition to the mayor, the city manager or a councilor so authorized by an action of the city council could execute conveyances. This was really just about good governance. This is about preventing a future crisis. you imagine for a moment a mayor who becomes incapacitated. Imagine a mayor who's out of the country. Imagine there may be a time where there's a conflict. Imagine that the city's selling property to the school district and the mayor works for the school district. Those might be situations where we wouldn't want the mayor to be executed. Or yeah, so this is all just about good governance and making sure that we don't run into a crisis and then have to figure it out on the fly. This charter change was widely supported by the voters. It passed by a vote of 522 to 293, which is a 64% to 36% margin. The second charter change before you relates to the cap on our undesignated fund balance. Currently, Berry City is allowed to retain 5% of our general fund budget as an undesignated fund balance. The proposal would be to double that, so that the city council could vote to retain up to 10% of our general fund balance from one year to the next. This charter change was the impetus came in the aftermath of the 2023 flood. Going into the recovery from that flood, we had retained the full 5% as a fund balance, and that is about, for us at that time was about $600,000 in our fund balance. We had built that up, like many other communities in the state, not because we wanted to have a fund balance, because we had unfilled positions that we just couldn't hire. We had police officers, public works, you name it. Anytime those positions are vacant, you accumulate that savings. That's basically how we had built it up. I can tell you, we much would have rather had those positions filled than have the fund balance. That said, having that allowed us to recover from those floods without having to borrow money. So as you know, FEMA is a reimbursement-based program. You have to upfront the cost, you have to pay it all upfront, and then you get reimbursed on the back end. Having that $600,000 as a rainy day fund, so to speak, allowed us to make all those repairs, float ourselves until we got those FEMA reimbursements without having to take on any additional debt. That was huge for us. The reason we're looking to double this is because we know that it's going to happen again. It happened again in 24. And so it's good for us to have that reserve to be able to respond to an emergency, and not have to borrow and take on additional debt. This is something that many other communities across Vermont have even more flexible limits on their undesignated fund balance than the 10%. Our proposal is modest. I think it's forward looking, and the voters approved this charter change by an even wider margin than the technical one. This one was approved by a 618 to 174 margin, or a very healthy 78% to 22%. So that's it. Those are the two changes. I really appreciate the committee's time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Nick,
Yeah.
so good to see you.
So good to see you.
How many years did it take you to accumulate the 600,000?
That was probably 2 to 3 years. It started before my tenure as city manager. When I started my tenure in 22, we had started to basically max it out. So it was about 2 to 3 years of budgets that had with those vacancy savings, where we had accumulated that that 600,000. Yeah.
Any other questions for Henry? Senator White?
I just want to say thank you. Fully supportive.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the thoughtfulness in looking to the 5 to 10%, because, well, I don't want to break any news that you're not aware of, but you're going to be hit by a flood.
Absolutely.
Like,
And
You know.
FEMA's not going to be there for you right away.
Exactly.
So I think this is really proactive, and I hope if other communities who are impacted have opportunities like this to address it in their charters or whatnot, that they take the,
It would be
because it's really productive thinking.
Thank you,
Thank
sir. And this is the way we sold it to our voters.
Thanks.
The way we sold it to them was, look what it did. We didn't have to borrow. We didn't have to take on debt. We didn't have to take on debt that was then we have to pay back with interest. This was a way for us to start, and we could start doing recovery right away.
Yeah, exactly.
We had the money in the bank.
Senator Vigos?
I'm also supportive. I do wonder, we had the Vermont League of Cities and Towns in sort of early in the session, actually talking about what is a healthy amount of the fund balance to be available to towns.
Yes.
Did you consult, and I can't remember what that number was, but did you consult with them at all in selecting 10%? Because it feels to me like it's actually lower. I feel like VLCT was actually suggesting higher. I could be wrong, because that was what feels like approximately 3 lifetimes ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't consult with them. What we, when the council talked about this. They measured, they tried to look at a couple of different options. We did have the idea of eliminating it altogether, which I would personally love. But look, we decided to start with a modest change because we want to build trust with the voters. And I think the voters saw what we did with the fund balance the first time around. They saw what it meant to us to have it the first time around. The voters also placed that 5% cap on us in the first place. So we thought it was responsive to the voters not to do away with it entirely, to earn their trust. If we're successful and if there's a need for it, we might be here again, but only if we've earned the trust to go up. I think that the 10% would get us to about $1.4 million now that our budget's grown. That's a pretty good amount of fund balance for us to retain and to be able to react to a flood if we need to. So we're pretty comfortable with what it means, or any disaster. Thank you, Senator. Yes. So that 1.4 we think gives us some room for the things that we might be confronted with.
It's a fairly conservative.
Yeah.
Forward, knowing that may not fully be.
Yeah, and if we earned the voters' trust to get to this point. Obviously, 70. I'd love to have my budget passed by 78%. I know it won't. But I think we earned their trust. I think that 78% on that vote was pretty telling to us. And if we're good stewards of that fund balance, hopefully the voters will reward that if we see a need to come back. But we're hopeful that this means 1.4 million for us and a rainy day reserve. We think that gets us what we need for sort of the immediate aftermath of any disaster.
Senator Clarkson.
So I'm sure Doug Farnham isn't listening right now, but we started the resiliency fund. I can never remember the full title of it, but we started in this committee. Do you remember we started whatever it was called in our resiliency bill? We started this one. This could be a good, to go back to your point about the LCT and what they might be asking towns to keep in their general fund balance. I always think of this as a contingency fee. I mean, it's a contingency amount that any good budget has. It's a great carrot that we will, given FEMA's challenges, if the state builds up this resiliency fund, which we hope when we have a better budget year, maybe next year, that we will be able to add to again, that this would be a great way. These would make towns eligible. If you have a more substantial contingency fund, that they would be towns that have more than 10% would be eligible to have that matched from the contingency fund, something like that, as a carrot to get towns to build their contingency funds. That's one. And the second, it's a question for you, which is, have you moved or fixed the garage yet?
We are moving to, we're moving to a location in Marytown. We have acquired the building, and we're going through the Act 250 process right now.
Great. Okay, good.
Beautiful site, built in 87. I mean, it's really in great shape. Not in the floodplain. If that garage floods, we're in all big trouble.
That picture was so worth 1,000 words going to that garage of yours. So I'm so glad that's in the.
Yes, we're very
it's not moved yet, but you're.
Now it's in the project. We're owners of the building. We have all our design. We have our contractors. We're waiting for the go ahead from Act 250, and we got all our approvals from Berrytown. So it is very, very excited about.
And do you have a date for fully getting moving?
We were hoping later in November, but I think that's gonna skip out because of the Act 250 process. Is becoming a little bit longer. So probably next spring, maybe next summer.
Invite us to.
Absolutely.
Even those of us who've retired, invite us.
Absolutely. We'll invite you. We'll have rides on the Vector.
Oh, riding Vector. You know her favorite part.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with the actor.
The Vector was cool.
We'll make sure it's there.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Thank
you.
Thank you. I appreciate the committee's time.
We're gonna take this up again Friday when Nick Booten or Michael Booten comes in. He's the sponsor on this.
Yes.
Oh.
Thank you.
I was ready to make a motion to move it.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Well,
we don't-
I've already invited him.
It's just, did you provide your testimony? I did. I emailed it right when I was here.
It's on the printer right now.
Oh, perfect.
But
I have
we,
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't we take a 20-minute break and we'll be back, excuse me, at 3:30. I'd like to really move out the emergency of the.
Good idea. That doesn't have an amendment about tax.
As far as I know, but
Okay,
nobody's emailed me about that.
yeah.